We are so happy to have these two awesome guests, Christina Lin, Director of Developer Advocacy from Redpanda, and Sarwar Field CTO of Timeplus. You two are actually quite famous, I would say, but if you can share maybe one piece of information that you don't usually share on the internet, that would be awesome.
Huge gamer. I do a lot of JRPG games. I've played it since I was 9, so huge fan. I still play a lot of our JRPGs right now.
That's awesome. I even watched one of the interview for the Bay Area co-founders, and they mentioned playing video games is a very common for founders, and maybe that even some element because in the game you always die and restart, and people feel it's no big deal. For the recent Blackness Wukong is fantastic piece. Sometimes when I say, oh, our life in startup company is tough, but if you look at the gaming, it's even tougher, right?
It is.
Hello everyone, welcome to the new episode of Streaming Caffeine. This is a podcast, so we interview people in the data streaming space. And today we are so glad to have Christina Lin from Redpanda, as well as my colleagues Sarwar. So again, this is Streaming Caffeine. So we making sure people can drink a coffee, tea when you watch this episode. Thank you so much to support this. And what kind of coffee you are bringing today?
So I'm a big Ethiopian coffee nerd. So I like super light roasted coffee, and that's what I have it with me today. And it's one of the most Boston local coffee roaster. So it's a very good one.
So you are, I can tell you are really expert of coffee.
It has to be lightly roasted. No dark roast. Dark roast is straight for espresso. That's my opinion. You might have a different opinion, but for me, it's like that.
Yeah, you probably know that we even have a talk on one of the current that is Streaming Caffeine. But that's just like coffee, right? There's a million ways. There's no really good way or bad way, but you really might have a strong opinion. What is your preferred way?
Exactly.
Okay. And so, how about you? What kind of drink you have today?
I'm just having black tea.
Oh yeah. Also, yeah, black tea also have a strong caffeine, and we are inclusive, not just coffee. Anything with caffeine is great. Again, again, we are so happy to have these two awesome guests, Christina Lin, Director of Developer Advocacy from Redpanda, and Sarwar Field CTO of Timeplus. And me is the head of product at Timeplus. In case people, you two are actually quite famous, I would say, but in case people who watch the video don't really know too much about yourself, if you don't mind, maybe share a little bit about yourself. Even make a little more entertaining, that is, if you can share maybe one piece of information that you don't usually share on the internet, that would be awesome.
All right, I'll start then. Hi, I'm Christina Lin. Thanks for having me here. I used to be a Java developer, and then I moved on to doing a lot of Apache Camel work. A lot of people see my open source work there. Then I moved to Kubernetes stuff. Now I am with Redpanda right now. So sharing some of the things I don't really share. I don't know, probably people knows about it today, but I'm a huge gamer. I do a lot of JRPG games. I've played it since I was 9, so huge fan. I still play a lot of our JRPGs right now. So in case you're playing RPG games, let me know. Maybe we connect.
That's awesome. I even watched one of the interview for the Bay Area co-founders, and they mentioned playing video games is a very common for founders, and maybe that even some element because in the game you always die and restart, and people feel it's no big deal.
Well, one of the things about JRPG is that you can always save and load. So even if you die, you can always come back to it. So that's what I like about it.
And how about you, Sarwar?
So my name is Sarwar. I'm a field CTO at Timeplus. Very similar to Christina. I cut my teeth on Java in 20 years. I still use Java a lot. And also very big fan of Camel. And in the middle, I've worked for some vendors like Elastic, Confluent, and Redpanda recently as well, working in the field, either in a professional services capacity or even a customer success. I like sharing my thoughts on the internet. I think people that know me, they know I have strong opinions.
Yeah, and today there are maybe too many different platforms. I guess every day people reinvent Twitter. People go from one place to the other place. The recent blue sky thing, right? I guess people rush from one platform to the other platform. Yeah, so again, also myself is Joe Strong, and I'm one of the co-founders at Timeplus, also head of product. Actually, I have the shared, the one I prepared is the same, that is I'm a big fan of video gaming, but actually I was a big fan of snowboarding, but I guess being a startup company co-founder, I don't really have enough time as before, so I play video game more. And for example, the recent Blacklist Wukong is a fantastic piece. And also when you play a game, you see whenever PS5 or the Steam, you see tens of thousands different titles, and each one with great cover. They are trying to introduce a different system. The competition is brutal. Right? Sometimes when I say, our life in startup company is tough, but if you look at the gaming, it's even tougher, right?
It is harder to succeed in a gaming world, I guess. And there's so many titles right now, I don't have time to catch up on every one of them.
Yeah, people even saying that is already investment money on the game, why I should invest time to play it.
Exactly.
Cool that three of us have a lot of common passionate things like the game and the martial arts and the data streaming, right? So go back to the streaming part. Redpanda is a great product to work on data streaming, but just in case people don't have a good idea what is Redpanda, Christina, maybe you're the best person to explain this to others.
Sure. Let me give you a very high level what Redpanda is. Basically, if you're using Kafka, Redpanda, I would always say it's an easier version compared to Kafka because it's a lot easier to get started. You don't have to deal with for me, it's all the shell scripts I need to start, starting the broker, and before you need to start zookeepers and all that kind of crazy stuff. You don't have to do Redpanda. It's so much easier. Just one single binary, one single RPK tool, and you can just work with it. So I personally found it super easy to get started with. So just get it started, just run an RPK cluster start, and you have a Kafka streaming cluster ready to roll, right? So that is Redpanda on the very high level, but we've also recently added another very cool integration tool, which is Redpanda Connect, which we're gonna hear about later, but it's something that you can easily replace your Kafka Connect with. So it's easier to get your data from an external system to a Kafka streaming platform. And there's just a tons of really simplified way of kind of getting started with streaming. So I think it's getting the hurdle a little bit lower for people that wants to get into the streaming space, that you can get it started right away. So I would say that's kind of what I understand what Redpanda is, and it's just getting you started faster.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, sometimes when I talk to some of the data engineer or engineer in general in some meetup, they even just start learning Apache Kafka, right? And they roughly know maybe Kafka is a default option, right? But if you can share some of the key strengths of Redpanda compared to the Kafka, and what that top three will be.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the biggest difference is the language that we develop it on, right? So Kafka was developed using Java or Scala, so it requires you to run a JVM. So you gotta have a very strong understanding of how garbage collection works and how do you tune that JVM or that Java virtual machine to make it run efficiently, right? When I started learning Java, I spent a lot of time tuning that stuff, right? So if you're running your streaming platform on top of that JVM, that means now you're tuning two things. You're tuning your streaming platform, and then you're tuning your JVM. So there's two different components you're gonna do with. But because Redpanda is written in C++, it's getting rid of that virtualization layer for you. So getting that virtualization layer means two things. So it means that you can actually have it run more efficiently, because the way that where you can directly control your CPUs and you can have direct control to your memories, so it will manage everything in a lot more efficient way instead of sending it all the way to JVM and let JVM control it for you, right? Immediately, I would kind of resonate that with if you're playing with an iPhone and an Android phone. They both do the same thing. You can have calls on it, but with Android phone, there's a lot of tweaks you need to do in order to make it work for you. But with an iPhone, it just works out of the box, right? So I think Redpanda for me is more like the iPhone, where I can just have it running and I just run. I don't have to care about how it's written, and I don't have to care, anything underneath the hood. Where if you're using Kafka, yes, it does the job, it does it great, but then you just need to learn a lot more compared to running a Redpanda. And if you're a data engineer, if you're doing a lot of ETLs, if you're doing a lot of pipelines, you're already busy with your business logic, understanding data modeling, and all that crazy stuff. Why do you need to learn about tuning JVM? I don't think that's worth it, right? So I think that, that's why we decided to do with C++, and that's kind of one of the biggest difference. And I believe Timeplus is also like in C++, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think we share some of that DNA as well. Timeplus is also written in C++. It's built using the ClickHouse engines and libraries under the hood, but repurposed for the stream processing. And we share also the great benefits of doing that, right? You can ship this out with a single binary. You don't have to worry about like all these jars that you pull in and getting like security scanned and having to deal with dependencies that you didn't write yourself, right? A lot of benefits. Christina, I wanted to ask you also Redpanda, from what I remember, was written to be very, very efficient at writing to disk, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Kafka used to write things into page cache, right? If you're writing into page cache, that's another virtualization layer that was created by your operating system, right? But in our case, we're directly calling into DMAs, right? So we're directly calling and putting data into your disks. So your disk is kind of running on a different hardware. They can decide where to put your data, right? It can directly write your data into the disk. Before, people think that disk is the biggest hurdle or it's going to take the most of the time. But it's actually not the case anymore, because now we have NVMe disk where everything was kind of right into flash and everything's super fast. It's not going to be the bottleneck anymore. So if we're having everything directly right into disk, you don't need that extra queue on your page cache and then put it into your disk, right? So getting rid of that, another layer of virtualization. And because of that virtualization, you're in the risk of losing the data, because what happens if something goes wrong with the operating system, you're restarting, you lost that entire page cache, right? So you're having also that risk as well. So we're getting rid of that another virtualization layer. We write it direct to disk, so that makes it super efficient. I hope that explains it.
I even think there's some conference recently that is even people saying that is the OS API is not very friendly to database developers, right? There's some talk from CMU of professor that is maybe you should bypass some of the OS call and do something crazy. It looks crazy, but actually will be more efficient for system like
I
database.
guess it was working before because the hardware is a little bit different. So the operating system needs to do a lot of work, but now that hardware is more efficient, and then why do you have to go through that extra operating system layer in order to get to the hardware, right? So I think now things change so super fast, and then that's why you don't need that extra.
And I guess that's also one of the benefits to build on the low-level programming language such as C++, not Java, right? So both the Redpanda and the Timeplus can leverage some of the low-level APIs, IOU rings, all those C*, all those low-level things. Otherwise, you have to go JNI using Java, which can be problematic.
Exactly. And I guess it's really good for the edge processing as well, right? Because if it's super lightweight, then on your edge, you don't have to install that extra layers. And I think that's very friendly, right? I think Timeplus is also going that way too, from my last conversation in Sarwar, right?
Yeah, definitely. You have to kind of play to your strengths, right? So when you can do things efficiently, right? If you can make it smaller, then that means as a deployment substrate, you can put it on smaller and smaller devices, maybe stuff which is not even connected to the internet, right? Okay, or occasionally connected to the internet, and wherever you need to collect or process data, this is really, really good. Do you have any examples of any kind of cool use cases like that?
Before that, I guess I heard something from maybe Alex, the CEO of Redpanda. He mentioned that is you guys even put Redpanda into one of the satellites, put into the outer space. But anyway, I'm sure there's other crazy or cool demonstration or scenarios. Yeah, feel free to share more.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of that, right? So because you don't need a super duper hardware where you requires a lot of virtualization layers, so it's easier to deploy that. But from my experience, edge devices or IoT devices has been there forever. And then I've seen a lot of, at least from what I see from the customers, is that they have so many different edge devices that was in one single place, a plant or a manufacturing plant, right? So they have so many devices and they're giving off signals. And I think one of our customers, or at least what I see, is that they're trying to get data from their entire plants and then having it gathered in a single plant and then headed over to the headquarters. So I think that's more like a satellite way of doing things. And I've seen some of them were gathering data using Redpanda. Some of them did install on the edge devices. Sometimes it depends on the use case, right? So if you have a bigger or a more sophisticated hardware, then you can have Redpanda install in it, right? So that depends on what you are. But what I see the most is that people will put Redpanda in a router where each router will connect to a couple of thousands or maybe hundreds of different IoT devices where they're gathering data, and these data gets aggregated and relayed over to maybe a central hub, right? So that's kind of where I see things where, you see Redpanda everywhere, where it's kind of one of the aggregated points, and then one installed in the headquarter where it's getting all the aggregated data and then having everything logged and then have everything auditable like in a data center, right? So I see that kind of deployment for Redpanda on the more edge cases and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing, right? So it doesn't have to be necessarily on the really small device, but it's edge adjacent, I guess. And so they are usually like lower footprint devices, or maybe they're like gateways, as you talked about, right? You collect some data, and then where we come in is you can decide then if you've got like a lot of really noisy data or very high throughput data, but not all of it is like important, you can select the important data, or you can do downsampling, or you can do aggregation or routing directly from where it's collected, instead of having it come all the way to your data center, your main data center, or your cloud data center, and then having to throw away most of it, right? Whatever you can prevent from leaving where it's collected, it kind of saves you on the bandwidth and the CPU cost of processing later.
Yeah, I would say one of the most concern about people think about cost for streaming is the ingestions, like the ingress and egress traffic bandwidth. It's costing a lot of money, right? So I think definitely having some kind of aggregation, because with IoT signals, there's a lot of duplications. So you want to dedupe them, right? So you probably want to do some kind of tumbling windows or sliding window kind of like aggregation in order to maybe summarize the data, or average out the data before you kind of send the entire packet over the over the internet, because that's kind of where most of majority of your budget's gonna go to, right? So definitely thinking like do that kind of pre-work, and maybe some kind of rerouting as well would definitely help in the edge processing use cases.
That's
and I've
right.
seen when I was talking to some of the so I don't know if it's like 100% edge case, but I think that resonates with you on like sometimes they're offline, sometimes they're back online. I was talking to one of the bigger cruising company where they have like huge cruise ships where they're sailing around the world. So now they have like an entire ship with all the data signals coming from the edge devices. But if they're out on the sea, they're connecting through satellites, but it's probably not that cost effective to deploy the entire and stream everything over the satellites into their headquarters. I think that is one of the very nice use case to demonstrate like how do you do offline, and when you're back online, how do you kind of summarize it and then transfer it over to the headquarters, right? So something that I saw some of the like use cases I've seen for the edge cases.
Yeah, I mean, cruise, that's fantastic use case, and remind me maybe you should book the vacation for next year. But anyway, like you're right, that is on the ocean. That I'm not sure about the Starlink thing, but yeah, traditionally the satellite signal can be weak and also very expensive. Also, some of our clients on the Timeplus side that also deploy Timeplus on those on the train, or every single cabin they have a small device which is designed to support like all the shaking, high temperature, all those stuff, but they don't usually have good signal to the center, right? Because sometimes you might go through some tunnels or you in nowhere, right? So processing those sensors on the device, do those anomaly detection, downsampling, or triggering alert, that's really need a powerful system. And if you want to do this using traditional Apache Kafka, Apache Flink in such small devices, sometimes it's not realistic. And by the way, that one of our engineers even put Timeplus into his phone. It's based on Linux, right? So I'm not sure how useful it is, but yeah, you can put a stream processor or database in your phone to send some data and process the data.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be more and more like edge processing, like pre-processing on your edge devices, right? Like I don't know, like I was looking at the news the other day. It's more on the AI related context, how every company is now like having an AI model running and all that, right? But if you see Apple, their take on AI is a little bit different, right? Like how they want to run a smaller model on their own devices before they send it off to some crazy expensive data center to do the models, right? So I think that's one of the similar way of handling data where they try to do things like in edge devices rather than sending everything over to the data center. And I think if you do some kind of pre-processing in your device, that would be nice, right? So I think that's like a very similar idea of how people are implementing it right now. I just thought of that. I was like,
definitely. I've been speaking to a few people at Current and afterwards as well about this idea of having a small language model like trained closer to where the data is generated, right? Closer to the robotic arm or the assembly machine. And then once the model is created, well, it's almost like a database, right? So then you can federate your conversations to all these like small language models rather than having a big language model which includes all your data, right?
Exactly, and it can be more tailored and more fine-tuned as well. So it's more like to your use case, right? And then I feel like now the edge machine is going to get more powerful. So I think it's better to use that kind of power instead of like, buying a huge machine with like millions of GPUs and you're being charged by each token, right? That's not right. If you can like charge the clients first, then you charge yourself, because I think most of the AI companies are right now losing money because like they're actually paying for all the processing power. I think at this age, right? So I think offloading that to the client side, it's great. I think you're going to see more and more of that too. So having that data pre-processing, it'll be great.
Yeah, it's not just about the network traffic fee or just local processing, right? It's also about the privacy, right? No one wants to share everything to OpenAI or AWS even, right? So they want to protect their data.
Well, they did say they're going to protect people's data, but you never know what they're going to do, right?
Yeah, but I also noticed there's a lot of announcement or product from Redpanda, maybe regarding AI stories. You guys have different models to help people to better embrace AI world using Redpanda. So maybe, Christina, you can share some of the new updates or new features from Redpanda?
Sure. I mean, it's one of the things that came with Redpanda Connect. Redpanda Connect used to be just for ingesting and data from external systems and to streaming systems or streaming system to external system. It's more like a traditional integration and ETL tools, right? But because of the recent AI crazy, bubble that we need to be in there too. So we added a few more connector that allows you to connect to different AI models. So we have a connectors that allows you to directly connect to maybe an OpenAI model, to Vertex on Google, or Bedrock with AWS, right? They're just an API endpoint. So we wrap it around so we can send data over to the LLMs and then getting data back. That's one thing. But I think what's going to happen in the future for AI is preparing the unstructured data. A lot of the data is going to be unstructured, like an image or a documentations where they're unstructured. It's really hard to process them, right? So one of the things that we did is we also added an embedding connector where it can take whatever an unstructured data, turn that into a vector embeddings, store them into a vector database. So that is all the base for processing LLMs. So we will be able to get that data out of the vector databases and having you to be easily architect and RAG retrieval augmented generative systems where you can actually get your data out from vector databases from these unstructured data and use them as the context for your LLMs. Like one of the biggest problem with LLMs is because of hallucinations, right? It gives you like hallucinated answers. Having that guardrail will allow you to be more precise on providing, examples, providing answers for the customers. I think that's step one. But if you take a look at LangGraph, like how they were taking inspirations from ETL pipelines, you'll see like it's super similar. It's like building like ETL pipelines where it's grabbing data from external endpoints, it's grabbing data from vector databases, it's getting data from a database and put it all together, send it to LLMs. Very similar. What Redpanda Connect allows you to do is without using LangGraph, but you can actually use like our Redpanda Connect to assemble that pipelines together, so you get yourself a smart pipelines without using LangGraph, and you got that running. So you basically have an agent instead of just a LM applications running. So that's our latest updates on AI stuff.
And you're doing that with like YAML, like a bit of YAML config with some DSL of yours, right? I think it's called Blocklang.
It is. Yeah, we both came from the YAML world. We were very used to configurative, declarative figurations. I hate Kafka Connect because the way that it connects, you gotta specify your jar files and all that. Coming back to a more declarative way of getting your data pipeline ready, I really liked it. So yeah.
I guess there's nothing wrong to be a YAML engineer, right? So do all your logic in a YAML.
So interestingly, we're also working on making this process of getting your data and either pre-processing it or enriching it with some insights that you already have in your database or your streaming database, and then interacting with the LLM with something a lot more useful than just passing it in or just a normal kind of like prompt. And our language for that is SQL, right? So you just write SQL, right? At the end of the day, just like you have an endpoint that calls the Olama, we have a UDF, right, that can call it, but then just plain passing it to the Olama is not that useful, right? In a stream processor, as you know, the data is coming in, and as it's being enriched, or as you analyze it over time windows, you have all these like statistics and summaries and really intelligent data built into your streaming database. And so our idea is that as like say a new event comes in, what you can do is you can do these kind of statistical queries from your stream processor and then pass that directly into the prompt. So managing all that, there is some SQL, there's some templating, there's some API calls. But what the end user experience we want to do is like, you just have some configs that represent the prompt, the statistical queries that you're doing, and then the Timeplus UDFs take care of all that. But what we use Redpanda Connect for is to actually bring in the data that we need, right? So either data that we need to convert into embeddings or data that we need to actually enrich the event data, and then on the way out as well, right? So if you want to write that out to some like WebSocket or something for a chatbot or
that's kind of where I saw.
Right.
I see that happening, right? So you use your internal data to make decisions, make plannings, but then at the end, you gotta have an output to somewhere else's, maybe
that's right.
robot or maybe call out another processes or anything like that.
So that's the great thing about like Timeplus is that a lot of stream processors, the way they're designed is that it's just based on events coming in and events going out, right? You do some stateless or stateful transformations in the middle and they go out. Timeplus extends that and makes it so that you can write out events, like say just alerting, let's say alerting emails or alerting to another Kafka topic or something like that. But you can query it too, like a database. So we give you the JDBC API, HTTP API, and you can run these ad hoc queries based on the intelligence that has been gathered while you're doing the stream processing. So you get both, right? And so with Redpanda Connect and Redpanda also, we're kind of connected to the entire ecosystem of systems out there, right? Whether they're databases or data warehouses, or even like PagerDuty and Slack and so on, right? You can combine these in very, very powerful ways.
That's pretty cool.
And just to set the context, that is, if people don't really try the Redpanda Connect by yourself, I highly recommend you try it. I guess it's also a single binary part of the RPK, right? Redpanda Keeper. You can also easily use this with the Redpanda cluster for sure. But we actually been using formerly known as Benzos. Now it's a Redpanda Connect for almost more than 2 years, I guess, in Timeplus. At the very beginning, our engine, which is open source as a Portum on GitHub, which is using Timeplus to call the Kafka API to read or write Kafka. And also we added the ClearHouse native support. But we don't really want to touch every single system, no matter source or thing, using a particular Timeplus SDK. It's doable, but the effort won't be small, right? So that's the reason why we're really passionate about Redpanda Connect. That is, it's a very nice tool and very powerful, such as the Bobline. It's one of the most powerful language, I guess, to interact with many systems. I guess you guys support more than 200 different input-output connectors. It's very common in the fintech area or Web3 area to consume data from WebSocket, for example. Then we wrap the WebSocket Redpanda connector and put our extra effort on the UI, on the REST API, so people can not easily consume data from WebSocket or write to the WebSocket. But that's more like our internal implementation is Redpanda, but we don't really expose it because Redpanda Connect now has such rich ecosystem. You guys added those awesome AI features and many other edge processing features. The possibility is huge, and we decided to just open this power to our end users. In addition to some of the certain things such as Nets or WebSocket, we have our extra UI and the REST API. In the new version of Timeplus Enterprise, we actually provide all the Redpanda connector in our UI, in our REST API. You can just compose your YAML file if you know how to write it. You can debug locally and put it into Timeplus, and almost you can use all the features from Redpanda Connect. You can send to OpenAI. You can do almost everything in Redpanda Connect, but in the context of Timeplus Enterprise. So it's more like all-in-one environment for you to grab data from a message bus, processing it, send to other systems. It can be Kafka, can be ClearHost, but it can be arbitrary system because of Redpanda Connect.
What I like about what you're just saying, from it as a person that does a lot of like data engineering and all that, I don't like going to different UIs and different tools to get everything ready. So having one single interface where I can get everything is so much easier for me, because then I don't have to leave that platform. So I can get easy access to data, easy access to materialized views, easy access to my streaming data and everything like in one single platform. That actually makes, because I'm a developer relation, right? So I talk to a lot of developers. That makes their life a lot easier. That stands out a lot for me.
Yeah, I would say developer is a very unique persona. They really enjoy different choices, right? But sometimes if they can do something quicker, they don't want to go to that verbose process, right? So
yeah, why do I have to install 3 different things when I want to do my job? Like if I can have everything one, like why don't I do that? That's similar, right? So I think that's what developer wants.
Yeah, I guess there's a trade-off. And on our side, I was just going to mention that in the spirit of giving back to the community, we're also open sourcing the Timeplus input and outputs to the Redpanda Connect repository. So if anybody wants to run Redpanda Connect on their own with their own kind of like their own flavor with just the connectors that they need, they can, right? They can create these plugins and just import them.
Yeah, we all love open source. We actually benefit a lot from it, and we also try our best to contribute back, right? For example, we have a few PR to ClearHouse. We have a few PR to the Redpanda Connect, not just our own software sync, but also, for example, how to enhance the current WebSocket Redpanda Connect to support the different authentication or the open message, stuff like that. Hopefully that is, we put more effort together, and this can be really one of the go-to solution. If people don't want to manage a huge Java cluster, if they just want to say what they want in the YAML file, Redpanda Connect is one of the best options.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and the other topic we briefly mentioned earlier, that is because both Redpanda and Timeplus is implemented in C++, so it's ideal for edge processing. You can handle some low-level API or file system. But also on the other side, we cannot avoid talking about cloud native or leveraging, for example, S3 as a cheaper and easy solution so that you don't have to handle replication or the failover stuff. For the Redpanda perspective, you already put so much effort to optimize your system to handle the local disk, IOPS. I assume that you still have a great opportunity to do something different on the cloud side.
Yep.
Right, and how you can share about more of that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great topic to cover, actually, because we just had this new R1 release. Yeah, people get confused about like, what is R1? Like, what does that mean, right? So I just want to, use this opportunity to kind of clarify it, because, R1 is just a name for a bunch of things put together, right? So traditionally we have tier storage where, because NVMe disks are very expensive. You don't want to store your entire 3 years of log on your NVMe disk. So we have a way for you to offload them into an S3 object store. That's a much cheaper option. And why don't we just put it into an S3? That makes sense. For people that doesn't care about latencies, that's a good option. And that saves some money. And then we also have people saying that, since you're going to put in S3, look at all the data lakes. These data lakes are also in is stored in S3, but you know what? We want to have some kind of catalog where, Iceberg might be a good option so I can find where the data are, right? So that's kind of why the R1 kind of started, because since we're going to have things in S3 anyway, let's just give people different options. So in Redpanda, we give people options of, configuring every single different type of topics. So you get to decide if your topics, do you want it to be like super low latency? So we're going to go with the traditional way of, storing to disk and then offload it to tier storage. Or I don't care about latencies for this particular topic, so it just goes down straight to S3 to save some. Or, if this one is, not just for transactional data, but this one needs to go for the analytical data, why don't we create something on top of it with Iceberg formats and Iceberg catalog so people can find it without building that extra ETL pipeline where you're going to occur like an extra maintenance kind of effort. You gotta pay for that extra hardware and all that kind of stuff, and then the ingress and egress costs of getting away from to a different place to store them, right? So we just give you that options by simply configuring your brokers, and that will just work. So I just give you more options of, you can be conscious about your costs, your spendings, and how you want to organize your data. So that is R1. It just gives you a lot more options on that.
Yeah. Cool. So the option can be local topic, can be a cloud topic, can be Iceberg topic.
Yep, exactly.
Or you can choose whatever you want.
Yeah, it's like order what you want.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that's a common pattern now with all these data vendors, right? Whether they're not Kafka vendors or not. There are a lot of either streaming data vendors or data warehouse vendors, search engines. They're all going in this direction, and I guess it's again related to that favorite topic of ours, which is AI, right? You're trying to get to this point where the data can be stored very efficiently and cost effectively for use in like machine learning or AI or like kind of later boil the ocean style of queries that may feed that, right? And we have some of the same ideas as well. Timeplus, of course, comes from the origins is from dealing with fast-moving data. But as the fast-moving data becomes older, we don't want to throw it away either. So we want to enable those kinds of functionalities as well, right? So as the data goes through, once you've done your, let's say, 5-second DDoS detection or 30-second DDoS detection or your fraud detection, at some point or other, we want to emit those results as well to some sort of long-term store, which is, again, nowadays it's object storage, right? S3 or Azure Blob Storage or Google Object Storage. Iceberg seems to be a kind of like a healthy standard that everybody is circling around. It may not be the most complete one at the moment, but it's still good enough as a standard for everybody too.
Yeah, I guess that now, like, because of AI, like now we're waiting, instead of like large data sets to train the data, and then you're releasing a model every maybe week or every 2 weeks. Now we're releasing model in a much more faster way, right? So other than the LLMs, the model itself, we're actually releasing a lot of like smaller models in a much more frequent way, right? So I call it like real-time training. So you can have to have your real-time data ready for it to be ready for the model to train, and then you can release, because now like data ops are super, there's a lot of talks on ML ops, right? So now they can move things a lot faster. So with that real-time data available for training your data, changing your data predictions, you can actually have more like a much more realistic and much more, I would say, better prediction for like most of the result you get from your models, right? So that's where I think it's super important for those kind of like real-time getting data ready into Iceberg. They're more like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and also like features there for sure. It's very cool that is people in the data space or data streaming space would like to work on the same table format at least, right? People might argue which one like they call Spark-based company, Cloud SQL-based company. They have a lot of fight, but we roughly know that Iceberg will be the choices if there's no better option. But features there, but it's not that ready yet, right? So I guess people still have some requirement for low latency stuff. I really like the option from Redpanda, that is you can choose what kind of type of topic you want to choose. It can be local SSE or can be cloud-based. The choice is on the developer hand.
Exactly. exactly. And like speaking of iceberg format, I would say like it's not always the best that wins. Like if you think about Kafka protocol versus other protocol, is Kafka protocol the best protocol out there? Probably
even
not.
the CQ is not the best standard at that time. I guess back to maybe don't know
Just like
IBM time.
one kind of like catches on the time. Like the timing is most important. I guess iceberg now has the upper hand in here, so that's why we're doing iceberg right now. But if something that comes out like that's more efficient, people are adopting it more, maybe we can do that. But right now, iceberg seems to be like the most popular one, right?
I was going to ask you what your thoughts are on, coming back towards the fast-moving data side. The future of stream processing and maybe streaming analytics.
The future, I cannot predict the future. That's a hard question.
So where do you think it's going? Is stream processing a niche? Let's answer that first. Or streaming analytics, is that a niche, or is it becoming more mainstream?
It is not a niche. It is going to be part of the data flow, right? Like I think now it's not the static data. It's your data is going to flow a lot faster. So streaming data is going to be part of your data sets. It's going to be one of the, I guess there's a lot of pre-processings needed in order to get it to the place where it's useful, but streaming data is going to definitely be there as part of the collections of data that you're gonna get, right? So definitely gonna be there. Like that's my prediction. Definitely gonna have more data flow, and I think that the gap between transactional and analytical is gonna be smaller. I feel like when I first see Kafka, it was mostly used in the transactional space because we talk about microservices, we talk about event-driven architecture. Like I think Kafka was mostly used there. But now because of like everything's going in advance, I feel like analytic data is going a lot faster. It's kind of catching up on the transactional side. We're gonna see a lot more use of the real-time data. Because before it was very static. You're talking about batch pipelines, you're talking about like, Spark where it processes things like every 15 minutes. It's not fast enough, right? So I think that area has been progressively like progressing right now. So you're gonna see like the gap is gonna be closed, and maybe one day we'll see like transactional data and analytic data don't have a huge gap. There's no like a huge gap, like like there currently like there's two different sides. You get OLAP and OLTP, right? I don't think there's going to be that gap anymore.
The operational plane and the analytical plane. Yeah, so we definitely have our own take on this, especially those of us who've been using like Kafka Streams, KSQL, Flink, Timeplus. We really believe that there shouldn't be like a separate plane if you can get that data fast enough, right? The problem with the current method is that you have this data created in the operational plane, and then you run all these tools, whether it's a stream processor or whether it's like big Spark jobs, but you do all this processing, and then you still have to store it in this big OLAP database or some other database to serve it. Like where the innovation now, I think, and Timeplus is one of them. Flink has released Plus this week, or announced it this week at any rate, is that the materialized views that are giving you the high signal are baked into the stream processor itself. So you don't necessarily have to wait until all the data lands somewhere else until you can serve it or act on it, right? Or the acting on it is also important, right? Because once it's in this slow OLAP database, in order to have your microservice now react on it, it's really hard to then go like reverse ETL it, put it back into Kafka or something, and then get that right. It takes too long. Whereas in a stream processor, like this is our bet, right? Our bet is that as the data gets produced, no matter how fast it is, right? From your microservices or your transactional applications or even your mainframes, we don't care. We want to get to the insight as quickly as possible by processing it, not only processing it, but having that intermediate state, which is only useful for a few seconds, for a few minutes, to be queryable right from there, right? So I'm with you as well, except I have more of a stake on this, right, with streaming analytics. So it's just that naming, I think it's very unfortunate that stream processing and streaming analytics, like naming is very hard in computer science, right? So it feels niche, but I don't think it is, right? I think it's just known by different names to different people. And before, they never thought it was possible to do it this fast. Now it is. Now it actually is.
Yeah, sometimes the NLP, the AI was a niche. People don't think that's possible, but now it's everywhere. So we have a big hope for the data streaming side. Okay, so I'm so glad to have this conversation, have you two as awesome guest. And Sarwar, maybe you can have maybe 1 or 2 minutes as the summary. What kind of a takeaway you want the audience want to get?
I think it's really exciting, right? So I'm really happy to be here with Christina, right? Also like looking forward to the kind of like integrations with Redpanda Connect and other things. It seems to be there like AI is coloring everything right now. So it seems we all have a part to play in that journey, right? To marry real time and AI. And yeah, the future looks very, very exciting. Christina, penny for your thoughts.
Thank you. I think I'm glad we're on the same side, like for like the predicting the future. So 100%, like I totally echo with you on that. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, we are so glad to partner with Redpanda. And as we mentioned, we integrate with Redpanda Connect almost 2 years ago. One of our early development actually also leverage Redpanda a lot to our streaming storage and to the low latency processing. I think there's a lot of customers see the synergy between Redpanda and Timeplus. They can manage less infrastructure, but have very low latency, very powerful system there. Cool. So we certainly want to join more activity or the development with Redpanda, and I'm sure we can chat more in other events. And that's the end of today's episode of Streaming Caffeine. Again, this is just more like a casual talk for people working in the data streaming space. If you want to join the talk or if you want to recommend anyone, just let me know. We're happy to host them. Okay, see you in the next episode. Thank you. Enjoy the coffee or the caffeine next time.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
In the field.
Yeah, thank you.